All right, folks. We're going to call ourselves to attention here. I am going to start this off with a pledge of allegiance. So I'm going to ask you all rise, please. Raise the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please take a moment at this time to reflect, and you may join me in prayer. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, God of power and might, wisdom and justice, through you authority is rightly administered, laws are enacted, and judgment is decreed. Assist with your spirit of counsel and fortitude the President and other government leaders of these United States, the state of Wisconsin, Brown County, and this township. May they always seek the ways of righteousness, justice, and mercy. Grant that they may be enabled by your powerful protection to lead with honesty and integrity. We ask for your blessings for all that are gathered here tonight in this proceedings. We ask this to Christ our Lord. Amen. Thanks everybody for coming tonight. I just want to hit on a couple of points before we get into this. This is a public information meeting. This is not a meeting of the electorate. So there will be no voting tonight. There will be no action taken tonight. This is information. And the reason we're doing it this way is because I hate when I come to a meeting and a decision's already been made and basically I'm being told what's going to happen. Okay? Now, we're going to go through some presentations here, and I'm going to explain the process that we got to. And yeah, we've come to some conclusions based on going through this process. And what we're hoping to show you by the time we get done with this is that the actions that we take are not going to impact the township financially any more than it would normally. So we're going to be able to do some stuff based on what we've done and what we've looked at with what we have and how things have been progressing normally. Okay? I think that's a good thing. Okay? So, we're going to start talking off tonight, first off, about our current town hall conditions. Okay? Okay, computer. Get it going. Okay, how did we get to where we are tonight? So in the 2017 annual meeting, so a year ago next month, we had a citizen that raised a question about what we're going to do with this building and if we're ever going to do anything with it because of its perceived condition and some other issues. Okay? Those that were in attendance at the annual meeting took a vote, which is what is done at the annual meeting, said, ask the board to examine it and to move forward. Okay? When the town board met, they saw this as being three distinct issues here with this building. We saw three questions. First off, do we fix, update, or add on to this current facility? Okay? Or do we replace this facility with a new community center? And if we do that, do we build that here or do we build it somewhere else? Those were kind of the three questions that as the town board that we looked at. Okay? But we wanted to do this in the correct process. We didn't just want to jump into conclusions, so we took the time. And the first thing we did is we recruited a committee to examine those issues. Okay? So I'm going to ask the committee members to stand here. So the committee members are Teresa Wargo. Teresa, where are you? There she is. Stan Kazmarek. Sean Burst. Jan Bodart. David Diederich, who's already standing. And myself. This was a good mixture. We had citizens, we had a current town employee, a past town employee, well, actually she's still serving as a part-time town employee. And John actually has got some building trades expertise, so it was a good mix to get in to talk about this, okay? So, we asked the committee to examine some issues, okay? We wanted to know what are the future needs of this township, okay? If we're gonna look at this, we need to look out not just next year, we need to look out 15, 20 years, right? This building has been here since the 1800s, so it's served us a long time, okay? I doubt if they figured when they built it in the 1800s that it would still be here. I don't know that. Maybe they were hoping it would still be here. But either way, this building has served it. We want to know, is it going to continue to serve our needs for 15 to 20 years? Where are we going from here? So to do that, we wanted to look at what are the pros and cons of the two different options that we talked about. The current facility, and if it isn't the current facility, what would the pros and cons be of a new community center? Then we wanted to look at what are the pros and cons of each location, or of different locations, whether we do whatever we're going to do, continue to do it at this site, or if we go to a different site. We figured those were the big issues that needed to be discussed, and that needed answers. So the committee met, talked about it, and back in November we had a public information meeting, asked people to come to it, got input at that meeting also, and what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to run through the results of this. Okay? So the first thing was the future needs of the town. Okay? So we're looking out 20 years. And we figured this is what we're going to need in any facility, whether it's this facility or somewhere else. First thing is meeting space. Okay? We've got a small crowd here. We're pretty good. Okay? You've all been here on elections and whatnot. It gets a little crowded. I know I've stood outside days, whatnot. We want to make sure that we have adequate space. We also got the board and the committee meetings. I know of one meeting where we actually met out on the lawn out here. Okay, because we couldn't get everybody in. Luckily that was in the summer and not this time of the year. Okay. And then we talked about the ability to rent this place. Over the last few years, we've limited the amount of rentals that we've done to it and when it can be rented because of some of the furnace issues and some of the other issues we've had with it. And quite frankly, we don't get as much of a demand anymore to rent it. The next thing, the facility would need to be storage space. Town records. The town has to have records that we maintain. Some of them we have to keep them forever. The closet that you see back in the back corner back there, that is actually where we keep all of our old assessment rolls and whatnot in an uninsulated closet, and we need to do something with that. Okay? No matter if we stay here or move forward. We also have a lot of records stored. If you notice the cabinets sitting around inside the room in there, okay? So rental, it gets to be an issue. If you'll notice, there's some election equipment that we don't have storage space, so it's sitting out in that open area. We've got in the clerk and in the treasurer's office, we have public records. Now it works, okay, but is it the appropriate thing? And in 20 years, is that going to be the appropriate thing? How many of you have driven around in Swamico or in Hobart lately and how those places have filled up? In 20 years, there's a good possibility that this township might look like that. And we might have different needs. I talked about the voting equipment. The voting equipment is getting to be more technical and it's getting to be more expensive. One of the things that our clerk is working on, the state is mandating an electronic roll for the voters. That means that we're going to have iPads. That book that you see them writing in, that's going to be all done electronically. And it's got to have a Wi-Fi connection, so we're going to, if we stay here or wherever we're going to have, it's going to have internet connection. If you guys were wondering what the Wi-Fi password here for the building is, we don't have one. Okay? There is no internet here. Okay? Mechanical and janitorial. Obviously we need appropriate space for that type of stuff. And IT. I just touched on some of the needs that we're already getting for internet. As we move forward, and if this town continues to grow, we might need an IT room. Okay? The mechanical rooms in this particular building, if you, does anybody know where the furnaces are? They're actually suspended up in the ceilings, okay? And is it a bad thing? No, but it's this is how we've done things and it's working. Okay, office space. If we continue to grow, we're going to eventually need office space. We obviously do not have office space in this particular facility. Future technology, Wi-Fi, security. If we have employees, are we going to need we're going to need some type of pass entry key, camera systems, that kind of stuff. ADA accessibility. Currently, we fit the needs. We get ADA. If that were to change, I don't know. I'm hoping we'd be grandfathered. We are grandfathered on a number of things with this building. But that is whatever facility we would do. If we were to put offices in here or offices added on, we would have to meet those requirements. Okay? So, we kind of knew now, we kind of thought, okay, these are the things we're going to need. So now let's look at the pros and cons of both the current facility and if we were to build new. Current facility. Okay, this was actually a picture taken. They did the aerial flyovers. If you guys are familiar with the Brown County website, you can go on there. You can actually get a picture last year of your property. If you want to go on their website, you can get a picture of your property, what it looked like in 2017, and then you can actually go back in time and get pictures all the way back to the 1930s of what this looked like. So this is the current building. We believe it was built in 3 phases, which makes sense from what people said. You got this part here that we're in currently, okay? You had the second part where everybody was eating. And then lastly, where the restrooms and where all the plumbing is. We believe that it was built in those 3 phases. This is kind of fuzzy. It's 1938 photograph. If you go and look at it, I don't believe the restrooms were on there at that point in time. Okay? So, but these 2 parts were here. You go to 1960, it's pretty evident that the restroom part was built in. So the restroom, that was the last addition. So between 38 and 60, the restrooms were put in. That'll come into play later. So the current facility, what are the pros? Obviously the big pro, paid for, right? That is a plus. Okay? We got some nostalgia here. Okay, it's been used for a lot of years. And quite frankly, it is getting us by today. Okay? Those were the pros that we came up with. The question we got here is, will it get us by in the future? That'll throw some of these cons in here. On my computer. Some of the things I kind of hit on as I was going through here. The storage space for our records and everything else that's here. The condition, inadequate space, the records in the homes, the election equipment that's sitting out jammed in the closet, and we can open that up later if anyone is interested in taking a look at that space. So we're talking about, we have problems with storage space, and if we continue to grow and we need more space, we're going to have to figure out how do we do that. Do we take away from this meeting space? And so there's questions there that we'd have to answer. No room for offices. Could we take away that space, reconstruct, do a bunch of stuff? Possibly. Okay, but now again we're down here, we're limiting our space. Currently it would take some reconstruction in that area to put offices in it, but there are no current offices here, and our current town employees, especially the clerk and the zoning administrator, are constantly getting visitors and constantly wanting to see people. And quite frankly, I've had opportunities to meet with people, and when I meet with developers and whatnot, meeting them here is not the most progressive presentation, okay? It just doesn't present well. Space for elections and meetings. We've got enough room here tonight, but I think we've all been, like I said, standing outside in the election, waiting to make our way in here, especially on the presidentials, okay? Maintenance. We've got continuing issues here. It's an old building, so we do have continuing issues. Our furnaces have been a continuing problem, and there's costs there. It's an old building, okay? The building condition, some masonry and foundation issues that have been coming up, and some concerns that we've been dealing with. You notice that we painted the place last year, trying to help seal it in, trying to do some work, trying to keep it up. The floor and the substructure are in question. Okay, I see people looking at the floor. If you look at the floor, if you look in the floor, you can probably, it's a little hard to see with all the chairs, but there's a dip right here, right down the middle of the room. That, according to people that are in here all the time, are saying that that's slowly getting worse. Okay? It's progressively getting worse. That means, is there something substructurally occurring underneath this building? If we stay here, it's something that we're going to have to address. Environmental issues. What I mean by environmental issues, if we were to stay in this building, if we were to start tearing it apart and starting to fix some stuff, you look at the ceilings. There's areas where there's drooping ceiling tiles. There's stuff starting to come down. The subfloor. When we tore apart, or when we did the painting, we tore apart one of the windows because it was rotten and molding. We found no insulation in around the windows. And there's just little issues all around. Anytime you start messing with an old building, you don't know what you're going to find, right? Okay? And I will mention that we do have, at times, vermin issues in this building. It's an old building. It has an open space underneath here. Now, all the food was cooked off-site. Nobody has to worry about that. Okay? And by the way, I am going to extend a thank you to Diederich Trucking for the meal tonight. So, gourmet meal. So, but if we start tearing this place apart, we've all heard of issues such as asbestos and mold and different things that, and we do not know what we don't know at this point in time. We did not dig into that at this point in time, but we know that it could be an issue. Okay? Now, we did have a building inspector come in and do a general once-over and say it's structurally okay to be used. Same type of building inspection you'd have if you were to sell a home, that type of thing. Okay, some of this stuff is grandfathered, okay, if we don't touch it. But when you start digging into things, that's when the grandfather, and making changes and making modifications, that's when you lose that grandfathering. And then you have to bring it up to current code, which again gets expensive. Replacing the sanitation system. We've been very lucky over the years. The county didn't know that we didn't have a sanitation system here, so we weren't on their list. We all get a notice every 3 years, right, that says, have your sanitation system checked. We never got it here at the town until about 2 years ago. Okay? We have to have the sanitation system checked. We've talked to everybody that knows, and if there's somebody here that knows where the sanitation field, or if there is a tank in this building, I'd love to have them step up and tell us. We actually we hired somebody with a camera to try to get it down and out to see if we could find where the sanitation system was. And because of the way this was plumbed, it wasn't plumbed to current plumbing standards, we can't get the camera through and out into the field to even tell where the field is. So we don't know if it goes out and goes that way, out into the back field, or if it goes that way underneath the parking lot. Okay? If we stay here, we have to replace that sanitation system. We have to bring this building up to sanitation code. It's going to be at least $20,000 to bring that up to code for a mound system of adequate size. That's what I've been told. Now, I don't have a direct quote on that. That's what I've gotten from talking to people in the business. They said to get a decent quote, they'd have to have soil borings here to be able to tell us what they could put in. Obviously, we all know that it's going to be more expensive if it's a mound, and if it's not a mound, it's going to be cheaper. So it would all depend. So it could be $20,000 for the system. It could be $10,000, $15,000 for the system. I don't know at this point in time. We don't know, but we're going to have to fix that if we stay here. I'd throw another $3,000 or $4,000, maybe $5,000, because we are going to have to rip up part of that parking lot when we do that, because the sanitation system does go out the side of the building there. So we're going to have to replace some blacktop and patch and do whatever. And if there is a tank out there, and I'm not a sanitation engineer, but if we've got to remove a tank and it is out there, that's going to cost us more money. We're going to have more parking lot to replace. Okay? So, just costs that way. That is a cost that we have to handle here within the next couple of years if we stay here. Okay. Those were the cons that the committee came up with, and remember, this was done jointly in the committee and at this public information meeting. The new community centers. The pros. Obviously, we could design it to meet current needs and future needs, because you're building from scratch. Town offices, we could put town offices in. They'd be designed to current standards. We could put a security system in. It would have an updated look and appeal. Okay? Granted, this is nostalgic, and maybe we could build it with a nostalgic look. I don't know. That all comes, and that all factors in the price, right? As to what we want to do and how we want to do it. Okay? But we could have an updated look and appeal. And again, as I said, if this town continues to grow, as people come into the town, it's one of the things people look at. You know, granted, they look at where you are, but they also look at what your facilities are. If we have a progressive-looking town hall, does it mean that we look a little bit more progressive? Rental income. Probably not a lot, but it is something. I know there were some people that I talked to that said that are actually on some of my boards that said they don't rent, they won't even rent here. They go to Chase to rent for their families and stuff. Okay? It'd be nice to be able to have a community center that people could rent and actually use here. And we get some income out of that, and it's a resource for our community citizens, for our residents. The cons. Obviously, we would have to have a mortgage for it. Okay? This is going to cost some money. I know this is being talked about. I heard, it's being talked about in the coffee shops. It's being talked about, and we're going to give you some prices here in a little while. I heard somebody complaining because they thought it was going to cost a whole $200,000. I'm sorry to say, but just the average house in the township here costs $230,000. Okay? No, it's going to cost a lot more than $200,000 to build a building like this, because you want to build it to a standard that it's going to stand up and hold up for years to come. Okay? So, I'll deal with the mortgage issue later. Okay? The figure that we're coming up with is about 1.5 to 1.6 million to build what we're looking at building. Okay? And I'm going back to my original statement. I'll show you through the financial stuff here that I think we can do this without that impact. Okay, next thing. Pros and cons of each location. Current location, obviously it's historical. This is where we've had it for a lot of years. Nostalgic. One of the things we talked about, the other location that we talked about building at, the town owns property at the park. So that was the other location that we focused in on building at. Okay? There was some talk that it would take away from some of the recreational area there at the park. We go to the park. These are some of the pros that we came up with there. We've got utilities there. We're on the sewer district. When we put that park in, one of the things we had talked about is possibility of a future facility there. We were thinking maybe a fire department substation at that time. So we actually petitioned and got into the sewer district. Where's my sewer district right here? There it is. yeah, that park has a parcel that's part of the sewer district, so we can connect straight into the sewer district. So we don't have to worry about a sanitation district failing, or sanitation system having to be replaced in 15, 20 years. Okay, there's natural gas there. There's also cable and internet close. Convenience, it's talked about as kind of more centerage of the town. It'd be visible, easier to find. And it's kind of off that major interchange. If you don't know, when you go south on C and through Marley and out by Maplewood meets there, that eventually will be a diamond interchange. That's on the state's plan to be a diamond interchange. So it's kind of off that major interchange and coming straight into the town. This is an overlay of our current park. Okay? So where we talked about building it was right there, between the parking lot and the road. So it really doesn't take away from recreational area either. So that kind of takes away one of the cons that way. If we build it there, one of the considerations that we talked about is building additional restrooms onto the park so that there's restrooms or onto the building so that there's outside accessible restrooms at the park, so that when we have facilities or things going on at the park, people can access it and use those restrooms. I don't know how often you guys drive by that park, but there are people in that park all the time. That park is being used quite heavily. I've got a number of different associations. The rugby club is very interested, if we develop that, in using that facility. And there's other teams, soccer teams, etc., to use it. That's what it was meant for. You know, that's why it was purchased, is to be used. So putting restrooms there would help with that. The current town hall site, what will we do with that? What we talked about is that the town would retain that. We've got the big shed here. So now, as the town grows, it's going to possibly need a public works site. That's what this could possibly become. Okay? So, as the town grows, maybe you add on or whatever. Maybe we leave this building here temporary for storage. Maybe we raise it. I don't know. Those are questions that would have to be answered long haul down the road. But utilize this as that future public works site. One of the things I get constantly asked about is yard waste. If you haven't read, I put an article on the website and I've left it up there about yard waste. We looked into it. We wanted to do it on the old dump site. The DNR said, no, you're not doing it there. You're not putting it there. We don't want to put it in the town park. Those are our two other properties other than this location. If we move that, we didn't want to have a yard waste site here while we have the town hall here, because there's got to be machinery, there's got to be processing, whatnot, and you actually have to control the access in and out. Because otherwise, you know what's going to happen? We're going to end up with piles of leaves and brush in the parking lot. So it's got to be controlled. So, there are some possibilities. So, the obvious thought process here was, from the committee, was that was better. So, after consideration, the committee said it makes sense at this point in time, a new community center at the town park. That was what the consensus of the committee was, okay, after months of study. But then, we said, there's some things we don't know. How much space are we actually going to need in the future? Square footage. How much square footage does a town clerk need for an office space? How many square footage does it take to put 50, 75, 100 people in a room? What is the correct thing? We couldn't answer those. And then that how much thing. We didn't know how much, because we didn't know how much space. So we asked the board, we went back to the board to hire professionals. Okay? So we hired Mead and Hunt to do what's called a needs analysis. Okay? So, I'm going to turn it over at this point in time. We're going to go to Mead and Hunt's presentation on what they did with the needs analysis. And just give me a second, I'll pull their PowerPoint up.
Good evening. I'm Rich Lundeen, an architect with Mead and Hunt. I know most of you probably know Paul Willis, who's the engineer for the town, also of Mead and Hunt. And what we are asked to provide is exactly what Keith had said. Really conduct and interview the committee and come up with really, yes sir?
A little louder, please.
Okay. Really come up with a prospectus on what this building could be or should be. We are not going to be moving any further into it. We're not going to be the designers of the building. But what we're here and about is to quantify the needs, to work with the committee to define spaces, to define what are the possibilities for development of a community center on the site in the park. So, to that end, yeah, certainly. We are about community. I know it's been worked through, but as the township grows, I mean, having your town clerk, assistant town clerk, and treasurer working out of their houses with all of the public records with them can, as you grow, will become problematic. And as records retention laws, they're going to have to comply with and the like. So, as a part of developing a community, let's create a community center. And let's incorporate at least initially, an initial discussion on what town administration needs, and then on a greater scale, what does the community and community spaces need to be, and how potentially could we activate and help really activate the uses in the park site, and what shared uses could we have in the building. So we try to do double duty with some of the activities and some of the spaces within the building itself. I know that there's the footprint that we've been discussing, and right now that we looked at multiple options, either a 5,000 square foot building or a 6,000 square foot building that can be fitted within that site. The dotted lines are potential additions.
One of the things we asked them to do is when they were looking at it is to consider and understand that what you're going to see next is not absolutely the way this thing would be built. It's how what we could do with that many square footage. But then we also talked about, as the town grows, I'm going to go back to Swamico. Swamico grew in their town hall. They had to expand their town hall, then they had to build a new town hall. So we're looking at is that what's the best thing to do? And obviously, an addition on if it would be needed, would be better. So that's why we asked them to do that.
Right, and obviously it fits within all the setback requirements, can be accommodated on this site quite readily, and additions can be accommodated for the town administration or the community center aspect. Okay.
I'll be
You're going to be Vanna?
I can be Vanna.
Okay. So,
Next one.
yes, please. So again, just to reiterate what Keith had stated, small group meetings, voting, town meetings, and the discussion over the course of 3 meetings of approximately 2 hours each. There was many ideas were discussed in many ways of executing this project and developing content for this project. But what it was all about was making good informed decisions with possibilities and addressing current needs and potential needs into the future. Okay? So, well, I can.
Got that one?
Yes.
Oh, that's the wrong one. Okay.
So what was developed and what was discussed was having a multi-purpose space that you could put in seating approximately 100 people. Right now we have what, about 65, 70? What?
54.
54. So,
Not including the side benches.
not including the side benches. So probably with the side benches you're around 65 on that. So the space seated similar to this, but could accommodate 100 people. Obviously for town meetings, hearings, and the like, that's not a bad number, and it's not really a, a number that would be unsuitable for your needs. Also, we developed and had the discussion, as Keith had said, over to the left-hand side, providing toilets to the exterior. that could be utilized just by the park. You wouldn't necessarily have to open up the building for that activity to happen, but it would support the park. But also, as a good idea, that we included a little potential opening window from the kitchen to the exterior. You know, community groups could come in. You know, you have a soccer tournament or a rugby tournament, there's always promotions and, you know, support groups that use the soda and food money as
Gourmet hot dogs?
gourmet hot dogs like you had tonight. But it's a similar discussion. And then obviously support facilities, but not included and not to be a defined space, secured space for voting and voting records. So this is just trying to take all aspects of this at one time and come up with a relatively simple plan on how to support this. And then in the area that is green, that, okay, what happens when we move the clerk in? Well, you have the clerk, the assistant clerk, you have the treasurer, you have to have places for planners to come in, you have to have places for people to meet on there. So just as a small, you know, couple offices in there, actually a couple private offices in there, a conference room and an open office in there. And
Point them out. Point them out, what you're doing.
Sure. That this area right here would be just for the town activities. That
Office space.
office space for the clerk and for the board, open office space for visiting when your treasurer comes in, your planners come in, that all are a part of the town administration, and define storage. Define secured storage, because you have HIPAA laws for your personnel records and you have records that you have to keep for,
Also,
and an IT room,
and the
mechanical room, and a small conference room that can be accessed not only from the town side, but from the public side. So this is probably that room. If you look at it in square footage, it's probably a little bit bigger than this adjacent room that's next to us.
Okay.
Okay?
So this was 6,000 square feet. And we asked them, can you cut it down a little?
Yep.
And give us some options and thought processes back.
And again, dual roles.
Oh,
Whoop,
sorry about that.
that's all right. Again, looking at this dual program use, not only for community center, but to enable activities at the park and support activities at the park, but also satisfy what you need as a township on an administrative basis.
That's where he was talking about that spot up in the corner.
In the corner in there, we had to find the toilets that are to the exterior, and then a kitchen. When I say a kitchen, this is not a preparation kitchen. This is similar to what you have. You're gonna be lining up your Nescos, you'll have refrigerators,
So if
and the
you,
like.
so if you rent it, you know, if we're renting out to having the graduation party or the family reunion, this is the same type of kitchen that you'd see here, or if you rent from Chase or.
Right. We're not getting into the discussion of having a commercial level kitchen and all the code ramifications that would have if you have to prepare food there. So this is set up as a catering kitchen.
So then, as I said, we asked them to cut it down a little bit.
And what we did, by cutting it down, you just don't lop off corners of the building. What you do is you squeeze it from all sides to get the square footage in, because we maintain content, the same content, essentially. We might have to double up on IT and mechanical room spaces, but the larger community room went down to 102 seated, but essentially a little bit smaller in the town administrative office area, but still a very workable solution for their needs. So what we were about to this is define the goals, put content to a plan, and then really have the committee review ideas and options within that to come up with these solutions.
What's the square footage on that?
This is 5,000.
So you got a 6,000?
The larger one
And a
is
5,000.
6,000, because as you develop a plan, all of a sudden everybody gets what they want, you know, and all of a sudden you start going, okay, come on, this is getting maybe a little out of control, so you start squeezing it and you start working it down. But right around a 5,000 square foot option for a building for the content that's described here would be very reasonable.
What was that cost difference between the two?
It was like 150 to 200,000.
So, I mean, 150 to 200,000 difference for that 1,000 square feet.
Right. Now, what we didn't take out was the expensive space, which was obviously the toilet rooms. Those stayed the same, so we squeezed the common spaces.
Okay,
How big is this one?
what is our square footage here? This room here is, what did we figure here? Because we counted the tiles.
That's what you normally do. You know, they're 2x4s, so.
28 feet wide.
28 feet wide,
Yeah, this way, probably about 36.
about 36.
This room or?
This room,
This room.
this room.
Right. So if you would put even the 100 seated like this would be about double that, this size.
Mhm.
Now,
Give you a good perspective?
Yeah, I was
Double,
just, I was
no,
just
good
wondering.
question.
yeah, it's a good question.
So it gives you a perspective, double this room size. Okay? All
Any
right,
questions on any of the plans, or? Yes, sir.
Are you thinking about putting a basement underneath
this will be slab construction.
it?
Not at this time. No, as I said, this as is an idea, not necessarily the idea.
Right.
Because should the discussion move this idea forward, then there's an entirely different re-engagement and defining of these spaces that would happen.
And that would obviously be a cost factor that that would have to be figured in.
Right.
In the
So you
totality.
put the mechanicals down there, and maybe storage down there.
Exactly.
Right.
And they put in more than one driveway in that kitchen ground? Yeah,
Right,
one
and we-
driveway coming into
We got the one driveway.
Put one
Yeah,
drive
other
into
one
the
out
park.
of the park lot.
Well, I guess that would be for Paul. This is what,
It's with a county road, I don't think you can put a second driveway that close.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
okay?
If we needed to expand parking, you'd go into this area for future parking. And if, one of the things that they talked about is that there would be a row of parking along the side here, between the driveway and the building, so that the quick business, you'd come in and out right there. Handicap parking spots would be there. Larger crowds would be able to come in.
How many stalls are there now, parking stalls?
What do we got? Good questions that I don't have answers for off the top of my head.
14 times 4.
So 40, 56.
56 without them parking, you know.
So would we have to
Along here.
expand parking? There's a possibility, yes.
You park in the park.
Pardon?
You could park in the park.
We can park in the park area, yes. There is different areas. We can park in either side of that creek. We can park that. I know that the land that is to the west of the creek is what's called stewardship land.
This line here.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. That's what's called stewardship land. And I'm gonna go back on some history for those of you that don't know the history. The town had gotten a grant many years ago, and they bought 80 acres over on School Road. And they've been renting it out for years, and then we found out we weren't supposed to be doing that. So we ended up selling that property. And then there was also land that the town had in a park up in River Forest Hills in the subdivision up there. That was all lowland swamp. We were able to work a deal with the developer to keep a narrow access down to the creek, so we maintained our legal requirements for the subdivision, but we were able to sell him back some property, and then we bought, with the money that we got from River Forest, we bought everything on this side of the creek with that money. So this is not stewardship money, this is not stewardship land, this is parkland. So we can put a building in here, we can have active recreation, soccer fields, that kind of stuff. The stewardship land, we're not even supposed to have a soccer field over there. I know it was originally bought for that purposes, but when I started researching it, the DNR said we weren't even supposed to be doing that type of an activity on stewardship land. We can do the trails and the park and the prairie grass, that kind of stuff, on the stewardship land, but we can also do parking to facilitate that. So there is a parking, there is a driveway here, so we could eventually put a parking lot in this area. But we, like I said, we can also come in and expand parking on this side of the driveway.
If you add more parking, you have to put a retention pond in?
The site was originally designed to, not need
Okay.
detention. But if you add, that's based on the parking lot and the building area we have now. But if we expand, there's other things you can do besides ponds to meet your requirements.
Good questions. Good questions.
How many acres do you own here versus there?
This, I think, is only 4 acres here, and I think there's 15 over there, including the stewardship, yeah. It's something like that. And we didn't, and when we did, just for a little bit further history, that isn't all the stewardship land we bought from the 80 acres. We also bought a large chunk behind the dump, and we kind of bought that square out. We had the dump and we bought the acreage behind it, the landlocked area back in there. And that's stewardship land that'll stay conservancy area for as long as the town's around.
Where was the dump? There was never been a dump since I've been.
Okay. The dump, are you familiar with where the trap club is on Brookside?
Yeah.
There's a little driveway. There's a bridge. There's 2 bridges, and the trap club is between. If you're going north, you go over the bridge. There's a little driveway that runs off to the east right there. Back in there was the old town dump. Okay, so and it was just an old town dump. It was a hole. And people came and they just dumped and they covered it up. It's like many town dumps around the country. And what they've done is we have wells in there that we pay to have monitored every year. We have sampling that comes out of those in the fall, and we look at that and it's compared to make sure that there's no leaching, etc. But when we were looking at the yard waste site, we approached the DNR as what can we do there, because one of the things we talked about is can we build there also? And they were quite, what's the right word to say? They basically said no. No, the only thing we can do is keep that land, and actually we have to keep it trimmed also. We have to brush that out and keep it free from brush also. So that land there is, we're kind of stuck with that land. That land is all conservancy land. The trap club is there. They kind of keep an eye on it for us. They pay a minimal amount of rent. And they cover the sanitation permit costs for their site. And they're good neighbors, so we keep it. And it's kind of a town, it's a recreation spot for some of the guys in the town. Okay? All right. Any other questions on this?
What's the growth been in the town in the last 5 years?
We have expanded, we're up to just almost 2,600. 28? 27, okay, that's more than I thought it was then. I want to say we're growing, but I can get you those numbers if you want them.
Is that just voting people?
No, that's census numbers.
Huh?
Population.
Okay.
Population.
We added 21 houses 2 years ago. Last year was 13, and I'm already at 5 this year.
So we're growing. And I know, like I said, if you drive through Swanico, their subdivisions are pretty full. Hobart's getting pretty full. So when those places fill up, and Chase is building, if you go up C, look up there, they're filling up fast also. Okay? Eventually they're gonna come here. It's just the natural way of doing things. I know for many years we've been a farm community, but eventually that's gonna change. And when the money's right, and the developers come in, they're gonna pay the right amount of money, and the land is gonna sell. And what we're talking about is being ready for that over the course of the next 20 years. Okay? As you can see, any other questions for Rich? Yes?
This
going to the new site, is that centrally located?
Yes,
Pretty
Yes.
where
it's pretty centrally located, and it's on some more major roadways than it is here. I wish I had a map, well,
How far is it from here?
it's gotta be about 2 miles, I wish I had here. Okay. Now let's get to the point that a lot of people are interested in. This is always the key factor, right? Well, it is and it isn't. So can the town afford it? So I'm gonna remind you, budgeting is an educated guess based on known data. Okay, so we're taking some guesses here. We all know that, we budget our own personal budgets, we figure how much we're gonna make, how much can we spend, it's an educated guess, that's what we're doing here. Okay, but we've got some pretty good ideas to what's been going on. Numbers are based on previous years, spending and revenue. One big thing we can't predict is what Madison's gonna do to us, okay? They put a freeze on our rate increases. You know, are they gonna change things? I can't predict that. And we can't predict that, and I can't put that into these calculations. So we gotta move ahead with figuring that won't happen, okay? If you get bored by numbers, I'll try to wake everybody up when we get to summary, okay? Because I'm gonna hit some numbers here. So, get some definitions. The levy. The levy is the total amount of taxes gathered from property taxes on their yearly tax bill that comes to the town, okay? When you get your tax bill, and you see your tax rate and it's $18 or whatever, all of that money does not come to the town. We only get a portion of that. The portion that we get is called the mill rate, okay? That's the amount per $1,000 of property value the owner pays to the town. So based on the value of your town, or excuse me, the value of your property is how much taxes you pay, right? We all know that. Pittsfield mill rate, $3.25, okay? That's what our mill rate is. So out of that $18, some of that goes into VTC, the school district, here, there, wherever, $3.25 of that comes to the town. So a $250,000 or $200,000 property paid about $650 in taxes to the town. Or we had a taxable value in 2017 of $246,325,600. We get that number from the state. That number we get from them, and that's put into our budget calculations. Here's our mill rate compared to some of the other local municipalities. Hobart 441, Howard 392, Pulaski 837, Swamico 438, Chase $1.50, Maple Grove 277, Angelica 314. We can look at this, okay, and we can say this is that, but we're really comparing apples and oranges. Howard's assessed value is a whole lot more than our assessed value, okay? So they're getting a whole lot more money for $3.92 than we would get at that, because their value of their totality of all their property there is worth more, okay? I want to show you what our change has been. There's been growth in that mill rate over the years because we have expenses, okay? So from 2009 it was 241, and as you see it ticked up. There's some jumps in there. There's a couple of years where we were able to bring the taxes down a couple of cents. One of those years when we put in we brought in the garbage disposal, that popped it up, whatever. But if you take that average change per year in that mill rate, it's been about 9 cents. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Okay. So you all have done stuff. You do stuff. One of the things that, as town officials, that we do is we take care of these forms. That's what you elect us, and that's why we hire the people to do, to do the dirty work here and get these forms filled out for the state. This is one of those forms. It's called the Municipal Levy Limit Worksheet. We go through, and this tells us what our levy is. That tells us how much money we're going to get when we do that whole assessment, what that levy rate is. Okay. One of the factors that we put in there is how much are we going to count towards our borrowed money. we have in the budget, we're spending a certain amount of money to pay off debt. We can utilize some of that money on this worksheet to change the levy limit as to where the levy limit is and how much we take in taxes. Okay? The town for the 2018, this year, our debt service obligation is $365,140. We're only taking $110,709. That leaves $254,000 that we're not putting on the levy. If we took that whole amount and put it on the levy, your taxes would go way up, okay? Because it's got to be covered. But to keep the taxes where we are, we change that amount from year to year and balance it that way. Basically what the bankers have done is they've made it so that if you don't borrow money, it's hard to get money in your levy. So if we don't have debt, it changes the way your levy limit worksheet is figured out. Okay? So that was at 8. We came up with an even 800,000 last year is what we did as a levy. Okay. That levy or that mill rate up there 3 1/4. This is the budget. I'm just going to run over some figures here. Expenses on the top, revenues on the bottom. Okay. Our debt service, the principal is next year or this year, $361,000. Interest is $4,140. Why is that interest so low? Normally when you're paying off a debt, the interest is way high. Well, guess what? This is the last year we pay off the $4 million road debt. After this year, that debt is gone. So we will no longer have that obligation after this year. This year we got to spend $683,620 on road construction. I'll get into that in a second. Total other expenses that we've got laid out there, $700,000. See this here? We have to borrow $500,000 this year for road construction. That's why this number is so high. Normally we spend about $180,000 to $200,000 on road construction. That's all we can fit into the levy. That's about all we can get without borrowing money. I'll explain in just a minute why we can get away with putting this number into the budget this year. There's that town tax levy, some state road aid, transportation aids, but we got an additional $33,000 since they put those lines in. That'll be coming every year. I just threw that in there, and then there's other revenues that come out to just under $300,000. Our road construction projects, like I said, about $180,000 is what we, $180,000 to $200,000 is what we've normally been spending on road construction. We have an agreement with Howard and Swamico on road construction. That we get together and jointly decide on the years when we're going to do border roads. When we did Westline, we coordinated that with Swamico, and we got a grant from this. We managed to get a grant from the state because it was a joint project to get that done, and we got half of it paid for by the state because we worked together. Howard approached us because they wanted to get Glendale done between Greenfield and Oak Hill. We've all driven. If you have driven that road, it's terrible. It is a safety hazard. It had to be fixed. Okay, so that's going to be fixed this summer. So that's that road. The road's failing. It's a high traffic area, and we've got our obligation to Howard. That's why we've got to fix this summer. The second part is South St. Augustine Street. If you've driven that road, you know how bad that road is. The overpass that they're putting in over 150 or over Highway 29 will be finished this summer. When that's opened up, you all know what kind of traffic we're going to get on South St. Augustine Street coming north from 156. They're not going to cut over to 32 and come up. They're all going to come up South St. Augustine Street. So we felt that that was an obligation to get that fixed. So this is why we're borrowing money. It's because we want to fix that this year. We feel it's a safety obligation. That's what you guys ask your town officials to do, is to look at, and that's one of our major things, is to look at safety. So that's why we're doing that here, okay? We've also got, just south of Quarry, there's a bridge there that's failing. So the bridge has to be fixed. That's $100,000 minimum, okay? Now, I just got word tonight from our engineer that this number might come down too. Because of the asphalt prices on some of the other bidding, we might save almost $100,000 on what our projection is. So this number might come down. So that's a good thing, okay? But that's why we're borrowing, when you, in that side, you saw the borrowed funds. So I talked about our $4 million note. We're actually 2 years early on that, paying that off. We got to borrow the $500,000 to get South St. Augustine Street. That $500,000 obligation, what we're planning on doing is paying $250,000 of that off in 19 and $250,000 off in 20. Okay? That gives us that extra money in the budget. So we've got about another $115,000 in the budget. They're rough numbers. So now I want to show it to you how we would do this, what my projected budget would be if we were to build a new community center. Okay? So this would be this current year's budget. Like I said, nothing here has changed. Okay? Here's 2019. We still have that $250,000 debt obligation that I talked about for that first year. I took $100,000 of that $115,000 and put it towards pre-construction costs if we were to build a new community center. And the way the timeline would work, if we did this, is that we would start the planning this year yet, and begin construction then in 19. So the building would actually start being built in 19. It would end up being done building in 19. Our debt obligation would come in 2020. Okay? So the first year we got $100,000 in pre-construction costs. We bump our road construction a little bit up. The rest of this stuff stays the same. We're not borrowing any more money. Now, I am changing the levy a little bit because as you saw, our levy has changed, that mill rate has changed over the years, so I've projected that we're going to get a little bit more out of the levy each year. I've also, just for this 1 year, I've bumped up the state road aids, okay? Our state road aids are based off a 6-year average. The more money we spend on road construction, the more money the state gives us. So that will go up. But for just this, I bumped that to 145, just there. These are all projections. Okay, 2020, like I said, we build in 19. In 2020, the debt service, if we were to borrow for 20 years, 1.6, the debt obligation is about 1.5 to 1.10. Look at that. It just happens to work out that we can do that, and we can still pay our second year debt service obligation on South St. Augustine Street. Okay? You can see again I bumped the levy up a little bit. 2021. We've no longer got the debt service, so where did I move that 250? I put it into road construction. So now, in 2021, we're up to $400,000 in road construction. Almost $500,000. Okay. Not waking anybody up yet. Still got one more to go through. So now we're talking about if we don't construct, where are we going to fall? Okay. So again, this is that current year, that 360. None of this has changed. Here's that first year. We've got the $250,000 for the debt. I put $25,000 in to replace the septic system here because we have to do that. If we don't construct a new community center, we got to fix the sanitation here. So I put $25,000 there. I put the rest of it in here, an additional $75,000. Okay, this stuff is the same as it was on the other one. 2020, we don't have that sanitation. We still got our 250,000. Now we're up an additional 90,000. We're up to that. 2021. Now, only 740,000 because we're not borrowing any money. Remember I showed you at the beginning that levy limit? Unless we borrow money, we can't take that off the levy. Okay? But you'll also notice this. Yeah, your taxes are going to come down. Okay? But even that projection is less than the 5. I'm coming up with 374 instead of 394 or 395, whatever that was. I can't remember off the top of my head here. So to summarize, we can build, we can increase our road construction spending, and we can still keep our taxes at roughly the same level based on these projections. This is your levy change, okay, based on what I've projected out here. They're the same until you hit that 2021. Like I said, your levy would drop. My projection here in those 3 years is a total change of 12 cents. Remember I said what about the average was? It was 9 cents a year. Okay? This could be more, this could be less, but with the spending coming off, there's a possibility that this would stay the way it is. These are just projections. Basically what it's come down to, and I hope I've shown you here, taxes, if it's all about taxes, your taxes aren't going to come down until 2021 at least. Okay? And in 2021, whoever's in this board might decide, also, the other thing that could be done is they could borrow $100,000 on a note, on a line, and then put that money towards the roads. Okay? And your taxes would stay the same, and they'd have an extra $100,000 to work on the roads. It costs about $160,000 a mile. $100,000 gets you about a half a mile, or a little better. Okay? So you're not talking about a lot of road construction either, for borrowing. Basically, we got the same road construction budget with both plans if we drop the taxes. Maybe even a little less. And yet, then the last bad point about this is we still got whatever current issues we have with this building that we have to deal with going forward. Okay? I said it earlier, no decisions are being made tonight. Okay? We gotta, to do this, and the way it's working out, we're talking about a 20-year loan of about, we're talking about 1.5 to 1.6 million is what we're estimating. Now that could all change based on construction, what we decide to put into it, the level of quality of fixtures that, you know, if we're at $250 a square foot, is that tile on the walls in the bathrooms, or do we go with just drywall, you know, and try to reduce costs that way? All those factors come into it, but we will not know that until you actually get into building and pricing and doing all that fun stuff. Okay? To do a 20-year loan, it has to be voted on by the electors. So it has to be passed by the people. The board can't do that. So, we have a meeting of the electors at our annual meeting. Tuesday, April 17th. We got a meal at 6:30, and the meeting's at 7. Okay? Questions?
I don't see any interest on any of this money that you're borrowing.
That factor is figured into that 110,000.
What about that $500,000 that you're gonna borrow this year?
For the highway.
That's figured into that $500,000 is figured in, and actually it's probably gonna be less. We're getting very good interest rates right now. The loan rates are very, very good.
I just didn't see no figures of interest.
And I
on
didn't
that.
break it down, and I'm sorry, I didn't wake everybody up when I got to the summary, I'm sorry. I promised I'd do that. But no, I'm just because I didn't wanna break it, I knew I was already getting technical enough, I didn't wanna break that out.
All right.
What's the anticipated useful life of the new community center?
I would hope 20 to 40 years. I mean, Rich, you might be able to answer that better.
This one lasted since.
At least a 30-year building.
At least 30 years. Rich is saying
This
at
is-
least.
This is not residential, this is institutional.
So, just so that everybody heard it, that's about 30 years, and as you heard, this building has lasted since 1800s. So, you know, is there work that's done on it, that updates it, whatnot, as we go forward over the years to make it a 70-year building? Those are decisions. In 30 years, I'm not gonna be here, at least not in this position. We'll let those people make those decisions. Yes,
You said that the records are kept in that closet,
yep,
and that's not fireproof.
no.
Would you like to see it? I can open it.
No, I'm just saying, right now, if there was a fire, your records would be gone.
Correct. We really have to do something with it, and we were kind of holding off.
Can
You know-
you digitize the
No,
records?
we can't, we have to keep the records.
We have to preserve what we have.
Okay.
The
So,
historical
yes,
system,
that's definitely not a safe place.
the historical,
We do have some fireproof file cabinets, so
Okay.
that's some of the records.
but some of those are not, are pretty big old, they're big old books, the big old assessment roll books. So,
And my other question is it actually legal for the clerk and the treasurer to keep things in their home?
yes. Yes, it is.
You, is any of the designs, is it similar to any of the local townships that they have? Anything that you've looked at locally to compare it to?
We looked at, like Sampson just built, if you're familiar, Sampson, Morgan, I'm sorry, not Sampson, Morgan, just built. We looked at those floor plans. We looked at another one, I forget where it was from, Sean. What was the township that was at? We had a couple of different plans that we looked at, you know, and some of them were very linear
Yeah, Stetton
and whatnot.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the committee kind of leaned more towards this design. That's the only reason. And if in the end we decide to go with more of a linear outlay, maybe that's something we would do. Like I said, and like you heard Rich said, these are we just did this to kind of give you an idea of what you get for 6,000 or
Right.
5,000 square feet.
What kind of roof are you putting on this building?
Those are decisions that would come in again, that would factor in how much we spend on it. So if you're gonna go with a metal roof, you go with a metal roof, you go with the new, there's the new rubberized shingles that are 40-year shingles. There's some different, we just put that on the fire department addition. We just put a different type of shingle on up there. So there, again, that goes into the quality of the construction that we would have to be decided on when you're going through the process. And the process that we would use is that you would hire an architect, you'd interview, hire an architect, the architect would come up with the design, come up with the bids, the bid documents, and then it would go out to bid.
No flat roofs anywhere?
No, no. I'm not a fan of flat roofs. No.
Yeah, is there any continuing costs in the short term that you'll have with this facility? You mentioned septic, or maintaining it if we don't use it?
If we retain this building, I would say we cap off what's here and don't use, cap off the well, cap off the septic. And maybe it could be used for storage of who knows what, or maybe the decision is it's just easier and cheaper to raise it. Because I would say you cut, but then again, I'd say you cut the heat, you cut the water, but when you do that, what happens to buildings? Exactly. So is it better to raise it? Those are decisions that I'm not gonna, I have my own personal opinion, I would probably rather see it raised, but I'm just one vote on the board. If we were to do something else.
So none of those costs are as figured in.
No. No. So that is a possibility that would be enough, you're bringing up the fact that that's another possibility of cost factor.
Any idea what our utilities cost us on this place a month?
Yeah, what's our,
The heat is somewhere, well, it's yearly,
Yeah.
between 800 and 1200. And the electricity is, it varies, but 70.
$70 for heat? So it's not, the utilities doesn't cost us a lot.
Okay.
We pre-buy, we make sure we pre-buy the propane.
Oh, that's right, you got propane.
Yeah. So we pre-buy the propane, yeah, you'd be on natural gas over there. You pre-buy the propane, and if you go and look at the thermostat, there's a nice sign there put on by Supervisor Hitter. When we leave here tonight, the temperature's brought down to 58 degrees in this building. So we bring the temp down to keep the cost down.
Last year at the Legion building, we keep the heat at 50.
Oh, yeah,
That's it.
Okay.
No problems.
okay.
If you would raise this building, would this then be considered a site maybe for the yard waste kind of stuff, composting area?
Yeah, that would be a possibility. Or a public, like I said, a future public works building. You know, if the town were to continue to grow on the aspects of Hobart or Howard or Swamico, eventually we may actually need a public works building where you actually have public works employees, full-time employees, a shop, that kind of thing. That's what you could put here.
Do we have equipment now for mowing ditches, or do we contract?
We contract all that out. We've got 2 part-time public works employees. We keep some equipment, and it's kept in the shed, whatnot, that they use, signage, that kind of stuff that's kept in that shed.
Are we gonna get anything out of this 0.5% sales tax in this county? Will this township benefit anything from there?
It's a good question. I'm not holding my breath, and if we do get something, it probably won't be a whole lot. Sandy, you're sitting right next to our treasurer.
I'm shaking my head no.
Last year, really, the library, really, because last year, last year.
That's county.
Yeah.
That's the county's getting that
Yeah,
money.
but still, they were gonna give 300,000, it was supposed to match the community, and then all of a sudden, they're giving a sizable sum. I was just wondering,
I'm not holding my breath on that.
no, but I mean, I was just.
You know, we got some money out of the, you know, when the Packers tax went out, you know, that whole thing, we got some money out of that, and we put that money into the roads. We spent that money on road
We're paying
construction.
at 0.5%, then we should get a little.
I was at meetings, and Jan, I think you were there, Debbie was there, I was at meetings where I pitched it and said, that money, if we do a 0.5% sales tax, granted, yeah, some of it should go to the county, but there should be a prorated amount based on population that goes back to each municipality. That was the pitch that I made.
Rickenbach, I was to the meeting. He promised last year really great, so.
Yeah, promises, well, Troy has done some good things for us, and.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't wanna go any further than that.
On that new building, if they have a parking ramp to the, or a lot to the west of it, how big is that parking, how many cars will that handle? Because if you put them across the ditch, you're gonna have to build a bridge for people to get across the ditch to come to the building.
You'd probably have to put some kind of a drain system in through here, for that ditch. And yeah, there would have to be a walkway across here, but you could probably get another, maybe 50 cars in there.
It's a little over an acre, Keith, it's a little over an acre.
It's a little over an acre.
Right around an acre, I believe
So, I would say 50 car, you know, you're already getting 50 in one lot. If you look at it, that size, you could probably take that and swing it right over there. Then you're talking 100 cars. It's pretty good size parking.
So I don't know if they're good with that.
Is this park site gonna be big enough for 30 years, 40 years?
I would hope so. If we don't, you know, if you're suggesting we go to a different site, then you're talking about land acquisition and everything else. Land's running, the last I, in the town is running about $12,000 an acre. Depending on what it is. Deb, am I right on that? We've got it, they've sold for as low as, from what I've heard within the last year or two, it's sold as low as 8 and as high as 12. That's what I've heard. So, people here that's looking to sell, is that what I heard? Green Valley's buying a lot of it. So.
It might stop. Who knows?
Other questions? Folks, I thank you for coming tonight. I guess, are you seeing what I'm seeing here? Are you seeing that we can do this, maintain our taxes, and provide the town with a resource for years to come? Or do you want to mull it? I understand that. Okay.
I think you need to do it. I don't think you have a choice. This isn't gonna.
Well, I'm going to go back. Stan brought it up. He said it reminds him of an old pickup truck that he had. He said he loved that old pickup truck. Drove it and drove it and drove it and drove it. He said then it started costing him. He had to replace this part and that part, and then you had to replace another part. And pretty soon it started costing more for those parts than what he was getting back out of the pickup truck, and finally he had to go buy a new truck. Are we at the point in time in our town, and I think you're bringing it up, and that's kind of what the committee has come up with.
Just for the election and voter requirements that the state keeps pushing higher and higher. I know I work for Village of Swamico, so I do know what the state is doing to everybody with their continuing requirements. And from a voter registration and stuff, you're going to have to do something. And if you try and do it here, I think the modifications that are going to be required to this building, because you're going to lose the grandfathering, because you're going to go over that dollar amount, that percent, you know, that 50% of renovation and all that other stuff that the commercial code kicks in.
So basically, just so that everybody can hear him, and I want to make sure that it gets on the camera, what his point is that if we stay here, the money, it's going to cost us more money to stay here than it is going to be in the end. To move on.
He brought up a good point, and this happened to us at work. We just put on what we call a parts room. Okay, parts room was fine, but anytime you do a remodel to a commercial building, and this is considered commercial, we're going to have to change a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to have to bring it up to ADA compliance, and if you want to know, take a tour by the restrooms there. They will not meet ADA compliance. That'll all be changed. We're going to spend a lot of money sticking and remodeling this place to get it up to code, and we don't know what's behind the walls. I mean, I'm not a contractor by any means, but like I say, it's like I said, told Keith, it's like the old pickup truck. It'll run, but you're going to stick some money in it. Pretty soon, you stuck so much into it, you ain't going to get out from underneath it, and you're going to sell it for scrap, and that's about it. So I think, I like what the gentleman said, and I think it's time we move on, because it ain't for this our generation, it's for the next generation and beyond that this building is going to be used for.
And we can do it with our current budget.
I was gonna say, I'm an electrician, and to remodel this, I wouldn't even want to touch it. I wouldn't even want to touch it. It'd be a nightmare.
Office space I'm putting on, I keep the extra 1,000 feet in there. That's
Keep
the
the extra.
cheapest footage you're ever gonna have on that building.
That's true. Everybody agree with that? It's cheaper to build now than it's going to be later?
Yeah.
Take that extra 1,000 feet?
I think they look at places like the reforestation camp or Idlewild Park. You have those facilities that now the town has a facility. They can advertise that and allow your community to use it for any type of get together if it's big enough and done well enough. You know, that the larger size, you know.
The larger size.
You can't get into reforestation camp if you want to rent it.
Yeah.
That's one of the top.
Rented Idlewild for camera shower.
Yeah. We didn't even come here.
So, right, and we rented it for our anniversary too.
It'd be great, like if the Boy Scouts, would come trooping on our meetings here.
I've heard
Retired
they
people.
want to start doing stuff in new community center, start, you know, a daily or weekly thing, you know, coffee shop or something like that.
Retirees come in, play cards.
Okay, we're getting to that point in the time where it's breaking into all the little meetings. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. We'll be around here for a while. Take a look at this. Like I said, these are not locked in stone plans, but this is what we're getting for the square footage, what we're talking about. Come for the meal on April 17th, the gourmet meal. I do need some people to vote if we're going to pass this. So if you're in favor, thank you.